Hey, this is Matt. Once again, we're about to another video. This is another paid request, this time for Adam. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, rankings, lists, reviews, re-reviews, whatever it may be, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, this is for Grim Prairie Tales, a 1990 anthology film, which is a horror western. And to be perfectly honest, and I wrote down a couple notes so I wouldn't forget some details. This film, I know Adam said he thought it was one of the most underrated anthology films ever. I don't agree. Because the anthology part is what makes this film suck ass, in my opinion. Because, let me put it this way, if the film was just the wraparound, it'd be decent. Have more of the wraparound. This is Brad Dourif, the voice of Chucky. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift, Body Parts. He was in, Brad Dourif. He was in the Rob Zombie Halloween films as the sheriff, Sheriff Brackett. But he's most famous for being the voice of Chucky in the Child's Play films. He's a city guy on his horse. He stops for camp. Get campfire started. And then this cantankerous, grizzled bounty hunter played by James Earl Jones gets up and sits beside him, and they argue, they insult each other, then they decide to tell each other these stories, these horror stories. And that's the only decent part of this film. Because you got Brad Dourif and you got James Earl Jones. I'm not saying they're giving the best performances of their career, but there's some life to the movie when they're just talking to each other and they're insulting each other. And maybe it's a little bit over the top in terms of acting, but it's at least a bit entertaining. And James Earl Jones, he'll say stuff like, I repeated that story word for word. And Brad Dourif's like, oh yeah? Horse shit. Like the way they go back and forth with each other. And there's a point between a story where James Earl Jones trying to think of another story. He pulls up a gun and like shoots a cactus, and Brad Dourif looks at it and is like, "You mad?" And James is like, "No, helps me concentrate." They're kind of nice little friendship they get by the end of it, and the fact that it's not a twist ending, it's just kind of a calm ending. Almost like these two have become friends. Why can't the entire fucking movie just be about that? Of course, Grim Prairie Tales is a take on Grim Fairy Tales. But the four tales are shit. They're stupid. They're underwhelming. They're boring. They're a snore fest. And you're just waiting to get back to Brad Dourif and James Earl Jones just fuck around with each other. And what's funny is when the movie started, it has the title Grim Prairie Tales, and then the fucking tagline is part of it. Take the trail to terror, or whatever. I'm like, is that his subtitle? The full subtitle? That's a tagline. But yeah, Brad Dourif's character, like he's a city slicker, city boy. It takes place in the Wild West. He's going, I think he said, to Jacksonville to see his wife. While James Earl Jones has his dead body on his horse because he's a bounty hunter and he's going to take it in because it was a criminal, dead or alive. You get them the money. Again, they kind of talk with each other and then they get pissed at each other, and James Earl Jones is telling Brad Dourif, yeah, well, maybe you should be careful with that gun, that you have behind your head on the pillow. Probably liable to blow your head and nuts off when you play with yourself. I don't think James Earl Jones and Brad Dourif are sleepwalking. They'll be a bit over the top, but what they have to work with, being in this, probably a set, where you have one campfire, and all you have to do and can do is talk to another person, and then you have a guy who never directed before. The guy who directed this, I forget his name. Funny enough, he's the same guy who designed the poster for Back to the Future. You know the poster Back to the Future with the watch and looking down. That poster was designed by the guy who directed this movie. And so he wanted to direct a film. I can see why he never got another film. And this is a film that, I mean, is it the worst film ever to not get it? It doesn't have a DVD, doesn't have a Blu-ray. I mean, I've seen movies 10 times worse that have a DVD. Although there's other films I would prefer, like, to get a Blu-ray, like Murder by Phone with Richard Chamberlain. I want to see, that's not even on DVD either. Get that a DVD or a Blu-ray. Or how about, get a Blu-ray of these films. Get a Blu-ray of Nightlife with Scott Grimes, also known as Great Misdemeanors. Get a Blu-ray of Deadly Outbreak, Street Night, both films with Jeff Speakman. I'll put those above this. So again, anytime Brad Dourif and James Earl Jones are on the screen, you have two accomplished actors working well with each other for what they're given to say, what they're given to do. Again, it's not like this is the big pinnacle of their careers, but for what little they're given, I think they do the best they can, and it's easily the best parts of the film. To the point, it's been 7 minutes, I haven't even talked about the stories in a fucking anthology film. Because these are the stories. These are all the stories. Spoilers. Story 1. Old guy. Actor is Will Hare. You remember the grandpa in Silent Night, Deadly Night 1? The scariest day of the year. He stars in this as a guy who's in a Native American burial ground. My nose is itching because it's allergic to the bullshit I'm going to say. See, didn't fucking do that. When I was talking about those two actors, didn't itch. Now I'm talking about the stories, they're fucking itchers. Fuck. It's like it doesn't, my fucking beard, mustache doesn't want me to talk about the fucking film. And I need to shave it. But he's doing a Native American burial ground. He fucks around with this guy who is dying. The Native American bites him. The guy goes to sleep. And while he's sleeping, must have been a hell of a sleep, a bunch of Native Americans bury him. Like they build this big, like sand dune looking thing over him. And he wakes up, he's like, let me out, let me out. I mean, it's less than 10 minutes. I don't even know why it was 10 minutes. That's the story. An old guy bit an old guy. He went to bed, and someone made this dome over him. Jeez, he was a hell of a sleeper. I guess that bite really took a lot out of him. The end. Like, what is creepy or scary or like, how is that a story worth being told? The second story, Marc McClure, Jimmy Olsen in the old Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Funny enough, he was in an anthology film before this called After Midnight. In this, he plays a cowboy. Riding his horse, he finds a woman who's pregnant. Offers her campfire. Tries to go to bed. Turns. The lady's not pregnant anymore. And she'll say, no, please don't hurt me. Please don't do anything to me. But then she is rubbing his crotch and feeling him up. I'm like, you're sending mixed signals, lady. You say, please don't do anything to me. Please don't do anything to me. But then you're unzipping his fly and rubbing his dick. So he tries to fuck her. And lo and behold, she's some monster because Jimmy Olsen got sucked up a vag. That's the best way to put it. The woman's vagina was a vacuum cleaner and sucked up Marc McClure into it. So a guy got sucked up a pussy like a vacuum cleaner. And it looked fucking laughable. I did laugh. I wasn't creeped out. I was, what the fuck? I mean, I figured there'd be some kind of fucking problem with the lady. Because there's been so many of these times in anthology. I mean, even later on, what was that movie? VHS. Do you like me? Do you like me? And then she's a crazy evil bitch. I mean, I guess that's the one, like, maybe for people that'd be like the one shocker of the movie. But that story, it felt like it was only 5 minutes long. It's probably like 8 minutes long, but it felt like it was 5 minutes long. The third story is the one that Brad Dourif tells James Earl Jones, because James Earl Jones tells the other stories to Brad. It's not even a horror story. It's William Atherton, who was in Ghostbusters, the original, as, yes, it's true, this man has no dick. He was also in Die Hard, Biodome. He's on a stagecoach with his wife and daughter. William Atherton has to go with a group of guys. The wife tells him to stay. Atherton says, no, I must go, and slaps his wife. Then he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Then leaves. The daughter follows and sees that the group of people are part of a lynch mob. And they kill someone. And the daughter says, you're a murderer. Honey, you don't understand. You're a murderer. So I guess the whole point is, can you love someone who you think is an evil person, or has you thought was a nice father, but is actually this killer? But nothing's done of it. She gets pissed. Tossed to her mom, how could you deal with this? She's like, well, what do you know, little girl? No one was pitying me, and your father pitied me. Well, that makes it all worth it, huh? Makes it all okay. And then the next morning, the little girl hugs her dad. They tell each other, I love you, and then it's over. And I went, what was really the point of this fucking story? It didn't lead to anything. It didn't do anything. It didn't feel like a horror story. There's no suspense. There's no horror. There's no tale of terror. This story just felt really out of the... It didn't fit. It didn't fit with the theme. It didn't fit with... I mean, I guess grim Prairie Tales, okay, it's a story of a lynch mob and a realistic tale. I guess that's the point. But nothing really depth-wise is done with it. It's not like it goes into a consultation of, can I really forgive my father for doing this? Okay, let's have a conversation. Why did you actually do this? What about this? Why should I forgive you? Maybe I won't forgive. It's like either because there's no time, or the writer, the director doesn't know how to do it. And then the fourth story, Scott Paulin, he played Red Skull in the 1990 Captain America film. He's a gunfighter. In town, there's this, almost like the Quick of the Dead, where there's like, hey, we have a little gunfighting match. The gunfighter kills this guy, shot him in the neck, but he goes up and tries to strangle the gunslinger. Gets blood on him. Then he goes to bed. Then he has this weird nightmare that's animated. It's like a 30-second. It'd be like a 30-second look at television, where it's animated and he sees himself as a bullet going into the guy he killed. It just felt like it was out of place. You have this trying to be old school horror frontier western, and then again a nightmare that's like a fucked up version of what I would see of Better Off Dead and some of those weird animation stuff, or again MTV liquid television. Doesn't seem like it just fit. It didn't fit at all. And then at the end, it's the next morning. He pretty much told a hooker, get the fuck out of my bed, because he sees blood, but she doesn't see it. And the next morning he's shaving, and the ghost of the guy he killed makes him cut himself, and you don't even see it. Before he cuts himself, it cuts away. You see James Earl Jones just doing this. And then super spoilers, the ending is pretty much, listen, I enjoy your stories, I gotta go on my way. And I will say, I am surprised there's no twist. I'll give credit to that. The fact that there's no twist made it seem like a twist. So I'll give credit to that. Just like, okay, is it going to be like Brad Dourif is dead, or Brad Dourif is the dead guy that James Earl Jones is carrying, and so he's really tearing them into the underworld, or... You know, and I'm telling these stories before I do that. I'm telling you stories as we're on our way. No. It's just, they enjoyed each other's company. Where are you going? Oh, I get this guy. This is what he was described. Blah, blah, blah. No fingers. And then Brad Dourif looks at the body and he goes, did you say no fingers? And James Earl Jones looks and all the fingers are there. No, I didn't say that. Didn't say that at all. And then Brad Dourif is going off, and then James Earl Jones looks, damn it, drops the body, and he decides to ride with Brad Dourif, and he just says, yeah, it wasn't him. And then it ends. I'm like, why can't the fucking movie just be about these two guys? And it could be like Clerks, the horror western. Just take out the stories and just add like more dialogue of them telling their story, their life story, maybe some jokes or just fun banter intermixed, or pontifications about the universe intermixed with bullshitting about life in general, or whatever the hell people talked about in the Old West. The entire movie could have been just that, and it would have been so much better. It would have been so much better. Again, when you have an anthology and the stories themselves are the worst part of the anthology, and I can't think of another anthology film where the wraparound is better than the stories. Can you? I don't. And that's why I think this fails as an anthology. If I give it a rating, I rarely do that, and I always forget to do it because it's hard for me to do it. I would give it 2 stars, only one for Brad and one for James. But it fails because the stories are boring, slow, underwhelming. They're not scary, they're not creepy. And at times you're like, that's it? That's all there was? That's it? There's nothing to it. Or it's done already? What was the point of that being told? They're just... This shit wouldn't be serviceable on a Tales from the Crypt episode. Like, come on now. Give me a fucking break. Again, the most I can remember of the stories is that Jimmy Olsen got sucked up by a woman whose vagina was a Hoover. That should be like the fucking on the box. You know, if it gets on Blu-ray, this guy says, the film where Jimmy Olsen got sucked up by a woman's vag like a Hoover. But yeah, Brad, James, good job. The rest of the movie, boring as shit. Especially when you have anthologies that you could watch. Your Trick or Treat, Cat's Eye, Creep Show 2. Oh, God. Even non-horror, like heavy metal. God, I'm trying to think of... my memory's not good. I can't think of anthology films, horror films now. Tales from the Hood, that's a good one. It's not the worst anthology. I'll take this over VHS. Because it's short. It's like an hour and 20 minutes, and VHS, nothing was good about that movie. I'll take over, what was the other couple of those found footage anthology films I've seen? They're pretty awful. So it's not the worst, but I don't think it's the most underrated. I disagree. I definitely disagree. I don't know what I would pick as the most underrated horror anthology. Almost want to say Cat's Eye, because Cat's Eye I think deserves more than it's gotten. And Tales from the Hood is good. I don't know if I call it underrated, but it's good. I don't know, I'd have to see a list of horror anthologies. Anyway. But I mean, I would sadly, even like Scare Package, that was an anthology, I would pick that over this. And others. I know there's others I've reviewed, I can't remember them though, because it's been so long. But, yeah. With that said, thanks for watching, take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.